Please know you can text or call 988 at any time, 24/7, and have someone on the other line that can support you and help.
Hey, what up, fam? I'm posting this video here. It's the Zoom call we just finished to support around anyone who is feeling like they want to take their life, for anyone who is supporting someone else who's going through that right now. Just sharing my story, sharing some tools. Some dope people showed up and also shared their experiences. Together as a community, we can find answers and create solutions. I'm exhausted right now. I've been working hardcore, but it meant like so much to me when I saw how many people right now are struggling, and that I needed to get out there and make sure that if anything I can do to be hope for you, like there is another side. I'm so happy in the times when I was so upset and didn't want to be here that I did not leave this planet. And I promise miracles happen. Things change. There's one rule in this universe, and that is that it is in constant fluctuation. Nothing ever stays the same. Ask for help if you're in a moment where you feel too weak, and choose to love yourself. I love you. If you could only see how precious and amazing you are. And I'm sorry for whatever pain you've been through, and so many people have had to deal with such hard things, and we are going through such a transition on this planet, and we can do it together. Your life is worth it. We need you on this planet. If you're dealing with this stuff because you're feeling down, it's because you're special and you are tapped in, and you will make it through this. And when you do, can help the people I help now, because I learned how to transmute the pain into love, and I can stand here as an example. Sometimes all you need is to believe that it's possible that you can be in a space where you're not feeling what you're feeling. And I am someone who went from years of real pain, and I don't have it in that way anymore. You too can be that way. We all have our own path. We all have our own process. Learn from who you can. There's so many amazing people who are doing work and healing their trauma and have skills and resources. Find them, ask questions, let them support you if you don't have it in your immediate community. Please feel free to reach out to me in the comments. You can find me on Instagram at nada, naada.mas, M-A-S. I'm here for you. Really, truly. Reach out. All right. Stay blessed.
Also, remember to look out for part 2. I did not touch on every little thing I wanted to in this talk, so I'm going to share some more practices to keep your energy clean and clear in that video. Please go check it out. And of course, remember to subscribe and share if this is helpful.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the recording. If you're watching this recording, I titled this Zoom spiritual discussion around depression. And I'm doing it because I woke up, as I'm sure everyone else on here is aware of. I woke up a few days ago and I got on my social media like we always tend to do, even though my practice is now to take as much time as possible before I get onto my phone in the mornings. And the first thing that I saw was a post from Alicia Keys about Twitch taking his life. And I, as someone who had dealt with suicidal depression and attempted to take my life, and I have such a deep place in my heart for anyone who's going through that pain, because when I went through that period of my life, it was so painful. I saw that happen, and I immediately knew that the wave that was going to hit the collective consciousness of watching this person who, for so many people, at least for me, my association to him was this bright shining light, like all these cool dancing videos, always smiling. Like he was an archetype, and he was a person who most people got a lot of joy from. And to see him take his life, I knew that a lot of people are going to be very confused about why it happened, because they're going to be like, how could this guy, he seems to have everything and be happy, have chosen to take his life? And then 2, if he took his life, so for anyone, which is probably almost everyone, but with the pandemic and anyone who's sensitive at all to what's going on in the world, we're getting hit by waves of grief, and just looking at what's going on with the climate change and the issues in Iran right now and just all of it, people feel sad about things. And if you're going through any cycle of depression and then you see someone like that, the comparative issue that can happen of like, this person took his life, like, then why shouldn't I take my life? If this person had everything and he was okay to take his life, and not understanding the psychology behind that, then I became really actually alarmed at the wave that would then, the trickle effect of him taking his life and what discussion that was going to bring up for other people. And I pretty much posted some things. I posted a comment on Alicia Keys' thread. And at the end of it, I said, look, you are not alone. Please DM me if anyone needs support. And I got DM'd by quite a few people. And I was just talking to them personally, and I was giving them some tools and just sharing some of my story. And I just realized it would be better for me to put together a Zoom, as we are all here doing, tell my story, share some of the things that worked for me in my own healing process, and just get it out to as many people as possible. Even just and part of what we're going to discuss is about energy, just to create a balance in the field of like that energetic hit of like, whoa, the shock of watching someone like that take his life, to put good energy into the field, and to also be a stand for you can make it through those times. And I know that because I have been there. And so what I'm going to speak to right now is I am the same archetype as Twitch. I looked at that and I went, that's my archetype. And what I mean by that, like, my nickname is Optimus Prime. The way that I present to everyone in my life is this bright, shining star, and I uplift people, and I am a support for people. I'm the first person that people go to when they need support. And I've chosen, obviously, in my life to be a healer because of that. It's just kind of who I am in my life. And I was thinking about how to truly explain this for those of us who are naturally have that bright light. To be on this earth plane, which has a very dense field, it is quite difficult. And so for me growing up, I am naturally a happy person, but when things happen, or when in my process, that I have now learned, but when I did not know what was going on, also being highly empathic and feeling the sadness and some of the grief, when I got those hits, my first thought was, I do not want to be on this planet. When I was younger, at certain points in my life, I did try to take my life. Now, in my interesting story, I'll just say they for right now, I wasn't allowed off the planet, because every time I tried to take my life, somebody showed up to stop it. One time I tried to throw myself off a building. I don't even know where the person came from. There happened to be someone standing there, and a hand grabbed me, and I was literally punching the people. I was like, I want to jump off the building. And just these guys held me down. And at some point I had to literally just give up and acquiesce to the fact that I was stuck on the freaking planet. And even though every part of me did not want to be here, I was apparently not going to be let off the planet, So I, at that point, kind of sat there and was like, all right, I'm here. And I really don't want to be here. And whatever is going on, the way that some of this is not exactly what I thought at that time, but looking back, the tools I have been given and my relationship and story to life is not working for me here. And I had to go find answers, because I accepted that I wasn't going to be able to escape. So I needed to figure out how to exist on this planet, being someone who is so sensitive, and being that my default reaction was just to be like, I don't want to be here. So I really wanted to share that, because those of us, and you are all epic humans on here, and everyone watching the recording, I'm sure you are also epic humans. We're in like this very interesting time on the planet with consciousness shifting and people waking up. And I'm going to share, and the reason I title this spiritual is because my life view is not your traditional Western life view. Like, I am a spiritual person. I talk to my spirit guides, and I want us to discuss this because that was part of my healing. For me, I came into this world, and this may, there's going to be many different people, and we all have different stories, and are all going to have our own path in finding the tools that support us to be in a place where we truly choose self-love and learn how to navigate this realm of existence in a way that works for us with ease and grace and love and joy and fun, ideally, and wealth and abundance and all the good things of amazing people in our lives and experiences. Um, I say that also knowing that part of the life experience on this planet is learning how to ride the waves when we feel things that maybe don't go into those categories that we title as sad or that we call bad or that feel painful. I want to share also, like, we all have different life experiences. I was on a phone call with a friend of mine. Actually, we totally unrelated to her knowing that I was hosting this. She and I were supposed to have a meeting today, and I rescheduled it because I was hosting this. And she told me that her mom texted her last night and told her verbatim, I don't want to be here anymore. Please, would you give me permission, to leave the planet? And wrote exactly, this guy Twitch just took his life. If he can take his life, like, I don't want to be here either, kind of situation. So I just want to acknowledge that we're in a space right now where a lot of people are feeling that. And the skill set has been for me to like fully embrace all the feelings that come up in life, to become friends with all of them and not to judge them or myself when I am feeling them. And then also to have the tools. So, kind of 2 points to this talk. One is just to share my story so that anyone out there who's watching this knows they're not alone, and also knows and sees it as a living example that it is possible to go from a place of so much pain that you do not want to be here. I'm a really happy person now, and I still will get hit with moments. And actually 2 days ago, like when Twitch did take his life, I was in bed 2 or 3 days ago. Also, for 2 days there was like an interesting energy, and I was feeling kind of sick to my stomach, and that doesn't happen to me that often. I was like, the energy is just off. Also, that being said, kids are getting executed in Iran right now. There's some pretty intense things happening on this planet. But I woke up in the morning and I listened to my mental chatter, and some of that stuff of like, I don't want to be here. I still have the conversation. It's just not as energetically charged for me anymore. I can very easily look at the conversation that comes into my mind that's telling me those things, pull myself apart from it, witness it, and then also look at the reality of what my life is. And for me, I'm very blessed at a point where I have many people, and I've done a lot to cultivate this for myself, a support system of people that I can reach out to. That being said, I want to just say that some of the people who are watching this may not have that. And, some of the people who reached out to me are in life situations where they're either taking care of someone, like were married to someone, a few elder people who have like husbands and wives that they are full-time caretakers for, and like feel trapped and don't know what the solution is to fix their life or shift it in a way, because maybe they don't have enough money to put this person into a home or to get help for the person they're caring for. So I want to acknowledge that too. Like, we're all going through different life experiences. And ultimately, when it comes to suicide, it's that it becomes the only answer to get out, that we have reached a mental state where we don't see any other solution possible on this plane of existence. So I just want to sort of verbalize that. What I want to share with that from my views, and these are the things that have helped me to get to where I am, is, at this point in my life, I've done a lot of spiritual exploring, and I've chosen my life perspective is a chosen life perspective. So when I say that I got the nickname Optimus Prime, one of my dear friend's husband, who is a little bit more cynical, we've all known each other for years. We were all at an event together and something went down. I don't know, someone's car got hit, and he was like being all negative about it. And I'm like, well, you could look at it in this positive way, and at least this didn't happen. And he's like, are you positive about everything? And I said, you know what? I had to work my ass off to be this positive. And I did. I completely made a choice, going back to that young woman, who is like 19, 20 years old, who was so miserable. I realized, and I'm going to just talk a little bit about my process and how that went, that I had to reprogram myself to be able to exist here. And that was a combination of understanding how I felt physically in my body, understanding my nervous system, understanding my mental body, the way I was feeding thoughts into my own mind and how those were affecting the way I felt in my body. So taking responsibility for the stories that I was telling myself, and also beginning to understand myself emotionally and energetically. And as a very energetically sensitive human, and I'm going to talk a little bit more to some of this stuff too. We'll just see what comes out of my mouth in this talk. But that is the part too for me that I'm the most passionate in my life, because it's changing in the world right now, but there's the least amount of discussion around those things right now. We can pretty much, I just want to say that there are suicide hotlines out there, getting a therapist. We have access to these things maybe a little bit more easily, but it's not as prevalent right now that you can have a conversation with someone about like what's going on in your energy field, or, and if you're an empathic person, how do I figure out what's my feelings and what is not my feelings? And so my process, I pretty much at that point in my life and I say that I got smited by God, and like I got my dark night of the soul. It started, so I was a top lacrosse player. I was on my way to becoming an All-American. I blew my knee out and I could not walk for a year. And there was complications with my surgery. And so there was a combination of things of being a highly physical person who then I couldn't walk for quite a long time. So all the movement in my body, so this is the physical aspect, changed. At that period in my life also, there was a huge amount of societal pressure to fit a mold. My mother, bless her, and she had only the best intentions, but for her, the way of safety that she could take care of me was that I had to go to an Ivy League school, because if I got a good education, I'd be able to support myself and I'd be okay. Like that was the one thing that she could give her girls that nobody could take away. I was an artist. I had no desire to go to that school. There was no ability to see who I was or nourish my soul and my soul path, and not on purpose. So I just want to say that if there's anyone younger here, and not only younger, we want to look as we start to sort of dissect the feelings that we have. There's multiple aspects, and one of those aspects is the society that we are growing up in and what the conventional story is about a society and who we have to be. And sometimes depression can come because who we think we're supposed to be, there isn't space for that, and we don't know how to grow into ourselves. And actually, I was at Kripalu when I was in the spiritual lifestyle program. One of our teachers there read us a Gnostic quote, and I don't actually remember it exactly, but what I heard was this, that in this Gnostic text, so Gnosticism, for those who don't know, is sometimes considered the mystical aspect of Christianity. And these are writings that Jesus made that did not make it into the Bible, that were preserved by people who also were on a spiritual path. And the internet's there, and if you're interested, you can look it up. It starts with a G-N-O. But I want to give you a little bit of context. In the Gnostic writings, there is a quote that says something along that Jesus said, if you do not honor your soul, that it will eventually turn inwards and begin to eat you alive. That is what I heard from that quote. And it resonated so much for me, because that was what was happening for me. When I heard that, I was like, oh, that's what's happening to me. Like, I'm in a situation as a child where I had a very powerful mother who loved me, but was so pushing me into a path that was not my soul path. And I felt compelled, so because I wanted to be loved. And I was also 17 and terrified about leaving my family to go do my life path of being an artist, with all the collective stories of like, you'll be broke and you're going to die on the street, and all the things that were being fed to me, obviously making me depressed, that I took the path of going to college. And there's amazing things that happened. I wouldn't know Brian had I not ended up at NYU. But what ended up happening when I made the choice to go to college and make my mom happy was that bit by bit, and this is when I started to sink into this suicidal depression, the energy that I had in my system started to turn inward, because I wasn't honoring or listening to my intuition. And it literally started to eat me alive, to the point where I had developed bulimia. I was self-mutilating, and also eventually trying to take my life. And so in my process of this, and sort of the core step one of I would just say work in this world, whether you have ever experienced suicidal depression or not, is fully at making the choice to love yourself at some point, right? And I had to sit down and go like, okay, I am choosing to love myself. And that is what gave me the strength to stop hurting myself. So um, the first sort of rule or goal that I made for myself was no physical harm. And the way that that was expressing for me, I was not necessarily cutting like this when I saw it said self mutilating. For me, my anger and my rage, and I'm going to speak a lot about a lot of stuff because I think that one of the things that will help us to heal are people sharing their stories. The reason that certain types of things persist in society is because we don't talk about them. I was molested growing up. I had abuse, and it created a lot of rage in the way that it was handled because the adults in my life did not have the skill set and the tools. Understandably so, because nobody's really talked about those things at all back then. It's like a hush hush, and we hush it up, and it's happening in the family. That rage ended up expressing itself years later as me like punching walls, smashing my head into windows. That's like how my rage and my self hurt showed up. Like I would just hit things until I bled. And so my first rule for myself was no more hurting my body. Um, what I realized also is that, and this is what I want to say for those of us maybe, who are younger, I had so much energy going through my system. I didn't know how to ground it. Um, and that energy too is part of like my process and going through this. And I really do believe it all happened for a reason. I couldn't be here and be who I am had I not experienced that pain. The reason I am actually able to do the work that I do in the world is because I've gone to some really dark places, and there's not a lot that shocks me anymore. And I can, when I work with people, sit there and say, I see you, and I'm not afraid of you, and I'm not afraid of what you're going through. I've been there, and you can get out of it, And sometimes just hearing someone say that, and also just having someone to hold your hand that's not feeling weird and awkward and doesn't know because they haven't been through it, how to handle it. Those of us who have gone through this, and I really do believe, again, in my life perspective that I've chosen, I do believe in reincarnation. And I do believe that on some level, my soul chose to come onto the planet at this time to do the work that I'm doing here. And I do believe that we take on the bodies that we choose to incarnate, even though sometimes I was like, what was I thinking? The lineage that we choose to take on is like such a deep part. When I hear people talking about like, what's my purpose in the world? Literally just taking the time to heal the trauma of your ancestral lineage is your life purpose. You might be a musician, you might be a business person while you're doing that, whatever's going to come up. Those of us who are brave enough to actually not go into perhaps avoiding, it's all part of it and the healing. Maybe you turn to substances and then you eventually stop and you find other ways, or you go to Vipassana, or you do healing. There's tapping, breath work. You're in therapy, but you are brave enough to go, okay, I have this going on. This pattern's not serving me, and it's going to stop with me. So I just want to honor, those of us. And I really do believe like some people have taken on some super crazy lineages, and that's also where I want to say, like, we are coming together at this time. Like, this is a collective work. You're not alone. None of us are alone. And the transformation that's happening on this planet right now, it's not happening here alone. So I want to speak to that point of isolation right now. We don't realize how much we isolate ourselves, and we also just went through the pandemic, so there's even more isolation right now. The need to pretend in this society, to put up a facade, it's a real thing. And I, again, to share stories, had another discussion with a friend of mine, and her husband just recently shared with her that he's been using drugs, and she had no clue. And she was like, wow, even when in this relationship and we dearly love each other, my partner is felt alone for the last 6 months because he had his own shame around telling me what was really going on for him. He's going through a huge career transition right now. So I'm speaking to that because, again, when it comes to suicidal depression, it's when we feel like we don't have any options. So one of the rules I sort of want to put here, if you are going to bullet point something from this talk, as a society and a culture, it's so important that we start to learn how to ask for help first, not last. Most of us, there's this, I've been having this very interesting conversation of, and even as someone who's done it, I'm 44 years old. I've spent the majority of my life healing from my stuff, and I have a lot of tools. And even for me, sometimes I still get hit with pretty intense feelings in my body that I'm like, and I go through the thing of like, I am in pain and I don't want to be here and this planet sucks. And last time that happened to me, maybe 8 or 9 months ago, I just sometimes got hit. And sometimes I know when that's happening to me. I'm going to put these little gems in here so you can understand how I process. I know sometimes it's not all from me. I know I'm actually tapping into a collective pain and I'm just feeling it still. And for whatever reason, I needed to be the channel for that to move through me, but I'm able to disconnect from it, but I'm still feeling it and I'm still plugged into it and I'm still aware of it happening. So it's not like I have learned to protect myself and block myself so I don't feel these things. It's that I have an intimate relationship with that sensation when it moves and through my body. And we, before the recording, we're discussing Vipassana. Vipassana meditation is what helped me to have the ability to feel sensation in my body and witness it without reacting and being okay with whatever sensation was going through my body and not needing to label it or make it about me being bad or wrong. So in this particular situation a few months ago, the person that showed up for me is a newer person in my life. And I just was not okay. And he happened to be the person that texted me. And I just said, because now I know, like, I'm not okay. Like, I need to just talk to someone. Really do not underestimate when you are in a place and feeling sad, how much medicine talking to someone else can be for you. Just literally being in the vibration of someone else and talking about something happy, or maybe just talking about what you're feeling and letting someone witness you can be a huge part of just shifting your energy out of where you are. So many thoughts come through. I'm like, what? And I want to say this one little also point. Also, being okay with where you are when you're there is also a huge part. I'm not, like I make it clear, like I'm grieving or I'm sad about something. I'm allowing myself to be here and I may have a desire to get out of there, but I don't make myself wrong for being there when I do feel those feelings. So I want to put that little point in there as well to bullet point. Because then we can spiral into negative self-talk about why do I feel this way? And that's not helping us shift. So in this particular conversation, what we started to talk about, and he's someone who has children, is this fascinating human complex around being a burden. And what he said to me is like, Nada, think about how many people you support. And he goes, when your friends call you and they're going through something, how do you feel? Do you like to support them? And it was just interesting for me to look. I'm like, yeah, if a friend calls me and they need help, the first thing I want to do is be there for them. He goes, so why, and it's not just you, but why collectively as a humanity do we feel like such a burden when we need help? And he was sharing, with his kids, he's been working so hard to make sure that they can ask for something and not feeling a burden. He's like, even with my kids, and so consciously wanting them not to have this pattern, I still see them feeling like a burden sometimes when, they don't know how to do something or they want to ask for help. So I want to really, in this conversation, give a voice to that we all feel that, and to give ourselves permission to let it go. The shame is no joke, and we do it to ourselves. We feel bad that we don't have all our shit together. We are judging ourselves, and then we then project that like, oh, our friends are going to judge us. We don't want to let people know we're feeling sad. We get to destigmatize these conversations, because in my life, a simple call, like for me, from a massive state of feeling like I don't want to be on the planet, and I know this now. So here's a tool for everyone on here as we start to move into some of the tools. Have a list of people, and If you don't have anyone in your life and you happen to be in a place where you don't know who those people are, it might be a suicide hotline number. There are resources out there. I don't know all of them, and I threw this Zoom together, so I didn't have time to put together all the resources I would have ideally liked to for everyone, but they are out there. So for me, that was a list of 2 or 3 people originally who I just knew I'd go through sad times, and I just said, hey, if I'm going through it, can I call you? And of course they're like, yeah. And sometimes it was just getting on the phone and being like, oh, I feel like crap, and this is how I'm feeling right now, and just having my friend go, actually, yes, I hear you, and I just want you to know I love you and you're amazing, and it's okay to feel this way, and it's going to move. And that was it. All I needed to hear was, this isn't going to be like this forever, and oh yeah, this person loves me, and share a few things that I wasn't able to tap into, because when we're in the frequency of a downward negative emotional, energetic, or mental spiral, it can be quite difficult to stop the wheel and start turning it in the other direction, because we've anchored into a certain frequency and going into the energetic stuff. So when we're in a frequency, and I'm sure all of us have been exposed to this manifesting stuff, but it's real. Like, as humans, we receive energy and we emit energy as a frequency. And when we're in a certain frequency, as a radar, we're tapping into those thought forms, and it's going to be easier for us to access thought forms on that same frequency. So that can make it difficult to use our own energy, maybe to plug into a thought form that's different than whatever negative self-talk we're in. And the way that I see this tool for me is almost like this network of all of us holding hands as we go through this life process. Some of us are going to be up, and sometimes some of us are going to be down. And if you happen to be in a place where you're down, you're holding a friend, all you need to do is they can be like, oh, are you down there? Okay, here, let me pull you up a little bit. And that one conversation, that little pull, can be something can shift in like 30 seconds. And maybe it's not. Maybe you're on the phone with them for 3 hours, or maybe it's a 3-week process to help you shift your energy, depending where you are in that cycle in your life. But having people around you is huge. And the faster you ask for that help, the faster you can bring yourself probably out of whatever mind state you're in. So another tool, just to reiterate, when we're in that space, it can be very difficult to find better feeling thoughts. So I have what I recommend to people, and something that I did for myself in my healing process, is when you're in a better state, write a list of 20 things that you love about yourself, or that you love about life, or that make you happy, so that you have a list of things that, maybe it's your family members. Like for me, sometimes, my sister has 2 children. I do not have any children of my own. But in a few times, because as I said, I still get hit by this stuff. They're my anchors at this point. I've already made a commitment, because I do love myself, and I have made a commitment not to take myself out. I've just committed to myself, I will never kill myself. But it doesn't mean I don't confront it and have to have the conversation and be like, remember, you made that commitment, because you're feeling like crap right now. And for me at this point, one of my tools is, I just think of my niece and nephew and how devastated they would be. And I just can't. I would just never be able to do it, and know what the reaction would be for them. And I'm tearing up thinking about it. So, but that's a tool for me now. That is become my strength. So another tool could be like having a list of things that do make you feel good. Write it now. Don't wait till you're depressed, because when you're in that mental state, it can be very difficult to think about anything nice about yourself. So you want to have it in a place where you can pull it up on your phone and just look at it. Another simple tool that has helped me tremendously, for those of you that don't know a little bit about my life story, I broke my face in 2013. I shattered my left eye socket. And it's interesting what makes us feel, the thought actually in my head was, I'm never going to be able to drive again. I was like, I was like, this is horrific. I love driving. So I was like, no. And I watched myself start to spiral, and I was like, nope, I'm not going there. So what I did was I literally just streamed stand-up comedy for the first, week or so after that accident happened. And while I was figuring out what was going to happen to me, and if my face was ever going to get fixed, to keep my energy in a good place, I just put stand-up comedy on, and I laughed, and I just used that as my medicine to keep me from sinking into a place that I just chose not to go. So that can also be a very valuable tool, is laughter. And even if you can't laugh to it, if you're hearing it and there's people in that energy, sometimes that medicine can still feed into your field. Another tool that I'd like to share and sort of talk about back to this concept of suicide being a solution, right? If someone chooses to take their life, it's because they literally do not, this is the solution that they're choosing. It can also kind of be an accident if we're in pain and we can overdose or do something like that. Sometimes people don't actually mean to take their lives. So I just want to say that too. I have a friend who took her life and I saw it coming. And I had pulled her aside at a certain point, and she's a very powerful woman, and she was doing a lot of work and helping people heal from their traumas. But she'd come out of these, events that she'd lead, and she would be exhausted. And at that time, she was also getting on basically asked to be on a TV show, and they were doing the pilot, and they were on a very extensive filming schedule, and she was exhausted and she had no energy really to sustain herself. So I'm sharing this because here's another thing. When we let ourselves get depleted to that point, that's part of why we feel like there's no way I'm going to be able to climb whatever mountain we're perceiving in front of us, because we're just straight up exhausted. So making sure that you're taking care of yourself, self-care, right? If we're feeling crappy, like we may not be doing that. And if that's getting rest that you need to get, if that is something that's helped me tremendously, are Chinese herbs. I love Ron Tea Garden and Dragon Herbs. You can call them. They have a 1-800 number, and just the points in my life where I've been depleted, the Chinese herbs have helped me to replete myself, if that's a word. So that's another tool. And Qigong, any practice that is cultivating your life force. Even if you feel like crap and you're like, ugh, I don't know what to do, and you just want something to do to try to help build yourself up into a place, do practices that are building your life force. And these are some of the things that I want to speak to that I don't know are getting put into the discussion if we're just coming from a Western materialist view, right? You have life force. And the stronger that life force is, the better you are going to feel. Your body-mind complex is in a proclivity towards health. It wants to be healthy. We all want to be healthy and thriving. If that's not happening, we're probably depleted. There may be a miscommunication going on. It could be a chemical imbalance, right? These are all real things. So I also want to destigmatize, especially in the spiritual community, if you need to take medicine from allopathic path to help you feel better, I do not have any judgment on that. And I think that there sometimes can be a judgment in the spiritual community of like taking antidepressants. Some people need that to help them stabilize for where they are. As well, you want to make sure you're coupling that with the work around why are you feeling this way? What's the traumas that you still have to heal, so that it doesn't become just a Band-Aid. And you can actually have a true, authentic healing and get to a place where you can sustain your own energy, and you've learned to program your mind to see things in a more positive perspective. In positive psychology, they say that, I believe it takes 3 positive thoughts to counteract a negative thought. So just knowing these things, for whatever reason, we as humans focus on the negative things. I mean, how many of us have had like an incredible day? Everything's been great. And one thing happens and you're like, everything sucks. At least if this is how your mind and brain complex work, you can be like, oh, wow, look at that. How fascinating. And pull yourself out to witness like one little thing happened and all these positive things happen. I cannot seem to stop focusing on the negative thing. Eckhart Tolle has been an incredible tool for me. If you have, you can read The Power of Now, and also on YouTube, he's funny. I've read his book so many years ago. He talks about the pain body. I highly recommend checking out how he addresses. He's someone who went through massive depression and was miserable, and that's how he had his spiritual awakening. He has a breadth of tools. What I have found, my last breakup that I went through, I was watching my negative self-talk and like, oh, if you were only good enough. And I was like, this is a bunch of bullshit. Why am I even saying this to myself? This is not the right person for me. I 100% know this, but yeah, I'm still committed to sitting here. And the times that are usually the hardest for most of us are right when we wake up and when we're getting into bed at night, because that's the time that we're there by ourselves and truly get to see what is going on and in our mind and truly feel what is going on in our body. And I basically was like, no, I will give no more of my energy to these thoughts. This is my responsibility to change this. And I would listen to Eckhart Tolle lectures on YouTube. And I just put it on at night because everything in his teachings is about how to be in the present moment and come out of your mental thought loops and really see how much we create in our mind. So he's a invaluable tool for me. And whether it's him or somebody else, finding someone that inspires you and feels good. It could be I like Sadhguru. I've listened to Esther Hicks, stuff. There's so many resources now online. Put those talks on. If you don't have a friend, if that's your friend when you're going to sleep at night, have the talks on, have something positive in the field. And if you wake up, for me, my highest anxieties come when I wake up. It's like I wake up in peacefulness, like bam, like where did that even come from? Like pure anxiety. It took me a long time to reprogram that in my system. And again, bless my mom, but my mom grew up, she was a single mother. She was stressed out. Like I was a kid that went to raves and sometimes slept in, and she'd like come in my room, be like with the vacuum on in full blast, like, wake up, there's stuff that needs to be done. It got programmed and like I'm like, I have to wake up, there's stuff that needs to be done. Like I had to reprogram that out of my system. Like there's nothing that needs to be done right now. You can just relax. So yeah, I just wanted to share some tools. So I've been speaking a lot. I wanted to sort of tap in for those of you who are on the call. Do you guys have any questions? Would you like to share anything about your own experiences? You're all such brilliant human beings. I'd love any wisdom that you would like to bring to this recording to support anyone that watches it. Any tools that have worked for you. Does anyone feel inspired to share?
Should I?
Yeah, go for it.
Did I just jump in? So, Stacy, you guys gonna go first or no? Okay. By the way, thank you so much for all of that. I just want to say, there's the interweaving of the journey and the story with the understanding of the separation of sort of what you thought you were going through and the things you were experiencing that were emotions like clouds that were just sort of there, but sometimes they stay, sometimes they're a fucking hurricane, but eventually they move through, and how we react to that becomes really interesting. So just thank you for sharing that. I just want to just acknowledge some that's I didn't know a part of that. So it was interesting to hear, and how you rechannel that back into your work that you're doing. So there's a lot of things that came up. I'm gonna try to be real quick out loud because I was writing a list, and there's some really, I think, important to me things that were that just kind of plug underneath this. Long time ago, before the pandemic, I was a caretaker for my father. I think you know that. Like he had a stroke, and for 18 years, I was like the only person that took care of him. And a big part of my life was dedicated to that because why? My dad was a narcissist. So as a narcissist who was also disabled from a stroke, that's a real kind of combination that kind of interestingly came together. Was going to an Al-Anon meeting, and a woman stands up and she's like, listen, for the first time in my life, I have 2 beautiful kids. I have a job that I love. I have a husband that I love. And, and she's like, I used to, my family were raging alcoholics, and my dad was abusive, and blah, 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 blah. A lot of these form a very similar story path. And she's like, for the first time in my life, there's everything's going right. But this feels so uncomfortable to me because my life is like, I feel normal within chaos. And so what I think is happening in a lot of the ways when you talk about depression and PTSD, particularly PTSD, sometimes people don't know that they have it. Some people have it and think they're okay, but it's always just sort of there. right? That you have to want to feel good, better about yourself. There's a part of you that kind of wants it, and then there's a part of you that just like that is like, no, this is it's too uncomfortable. It's very it's like I'm gonna go back to this comfort level of being in my thoughts, of the negative self-talk, of being isolated, of not reaching out to people, right? And it's a really fascinating thing because like again, like I think a lot of creative people that are just sort of like that have been, whether the world just sort of just shat on you or just stepped on you and you just sort of like it, there's a great just a quick sidebar, great psychologist that was talking about the psychology of certain people, and that in the United States of America would probably not have gotten through the Civil War if Lincoln wasn't actual depressive, because he was able to handle the impact of what was happening during the time of slavery, how to get the 13th Amendment pressed forward. He was an actual, he lost children. He was but he was a depressive person. If you look at his writings, he wasn't that way. It's just fascinating, that parts of it. So these things give us this sort of resilience, even though you might not want it, you might not, like, again, and then that tells into the pain pleasure principle. And there's this, and then we determine what's good and bad between those things. Pleasure good, pain bad. But what's interesting is the actual pain becomes the tool. Bruce Lee has a great quote: "Don't wish for an easy life, wish for the strength to endure a hard one." And our work is the resilience that you have to build within that communal aspect, like a tree network, the way our brains are, or the way our lungs are, the way the stars are, like it's just this interconnected pattern. And I think that's the interesting thing, the disconnection. As somebody that is continues to have these periods as well, and I go through, incredible bouts of this stuff, like in a really deep way. And I kind of sit there because I do have all this work and training and all that stuff. And I'm just sitting there like, God, this is just like, it's exhausting all the time. Like regardless of what tools you have, it's sometimes just, it's overwhelming. And I think and this is the last thing I'll say, and I have a few more things, but I want other people to talk with the time we have, is, there's this, for people that are iterating that and have pain, that are thinking about ending their life. To me, the pain is me wanting to stay here. I think that if I didn't have the pain, I just feel like, and that's it. You just check out, there's the side door. The pain is giving the reasons of why you do not want to do it. And that's a really interesting sort of part that we don't remember. Like, you're like, I want to stop the pain. No, the pain is information. How we're processing the pain becomes really fascinating. And then, and because you shrink, you get smaller, you don't want to be a burden onto friends or to people. And yeah, you know what? They are going to judge you. And listen, here's the thing. Sometimes your friends will be like, wait, no, you should have called me. What's going on? But at the same time, there's also a part of it where, like, I hope that Brian guy is not calling me again, because I gotta, I'm in my thing, right? They might love me, but it's like, oh, they're, Brian is that, this sort of are just brilliant, creative, manic depressive person that either is doing incredibly well, or we have to worry about him. And it's a really interesting, you try to manage those things because you're operating within their world. They're not operating in your world. You have to operate within their world. And that's the sort of weird thing that you have to feel. Anyway, I just wanted to throw those out. No good or bad, no right or wrong. I'm just sort of throwing this out there for you guys to nibble on.
Yeah, super awesome. Thank you. I just want to I'm really happy you brought up the point about actually Joe Dispenza's work touches on this, the addictive part of the pain, that we become so used to feeling a certain thing in our nervous system, and we want it. We want to like get hits of the pain.
Yeah.
I really resonate with that. I kind of want to hear your other points. Stacy, did you want to say something? Finish up. You said you had a few more points. I would love to hear what else you have to share, because this is really a collective space and we all have our own wisdom, and I want to hear the rest of what you have to share in your own process.
Sure. There's the the in regards to the negative self-talk, what's interesting about that is you don't know that you're doing it a lot of the time. It's just there. It's a constant, theme, and the mind is consistently looking for the danger, and that is typically from trauma. Now we all have various different forms. You talk about the sort of intergenerational parts of that you need to break, or you don't have to. It's just an opportunity, right? Parents, grandparents did what they believed that there was doing the right thing, but they had their own stuff that they were inherited. My father dealt with it with money, drugs, sex. Like, he just talked about, like, when toward the end of his life, how many times he cheated my mom and my stepmother, and he was just a sex addict and a food addict. And again, like, after he died, I just found out so many things that happened in the family, and that was his way of medicating himself to deal with the trauma that he witnessed and experienced that he never talked about. And then, then the issue of that, actually, how he even said along to my aunt, they were together when my grandfather died of a heart attack, and he called her and he goes like this. He goes, after he died, he goes, "I killed Dad. Not that he died of a heart attack, but I killed him." And every day my mom told me he went to actually shul, even though he was an atheist, to just to have for forgiveness. And then he found est, and then he got into cocaine, and then he was just woo. But what was really, really interesting about that was shit that my grandfather did, and it was a real thing when he was like and it was like these nuggets that just sort of made sense, and sort of like that. And all of a sudden I developed empathy in a way that I hadn't had, even though he's not here anymore, because of the things that he was dealing with that he couldn't talk about, that he was able to process. And that's the interesting thing. So I think there's a really interesting thing, relationship between the negative self-talk, that we have anxiety being around people like that they couldn't process that. And so the mind's consistently looking for danger. So D, like coming down to a state of neutral for your nervous system, and then trying to figure out how you can kind of get to that neutrality on a daily basis to allow to follow an intuition versus the fight or flight response. So that was one of the things. And then well, I think that's about it. I kind of ran through. There was a few other small notes that I had, but yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah. It's just, I feel very blessed. I think also in my life at this point, you've brought a few points in, like, I can only share my life experience, and I have actually done work and really done the work of getting clear of who's in my sphere. And it just speaks to you guys who have shown up to the recording, and thank you for sharing your wisdom. Like, everyone on here is someone does their work, and we've all gone through things. And so I want to acknowledge you for that. And anyone who's watching this recording is someone who's choosing to show up. And even if you didn't feel comfortable coming to the recording, you're watching it and you're finding tools, and know that, like, we're all here supporting you and sharing what's worked for us in hopes that it helps you find a place of happiness. And so what I want to touch on, I think that sometimes I forget, is, like, you're right. Some of our friends may not have. I'm very blessed at this point at 44 to be surrounded by people who've done a lot of work and have tools to help me. Some of us are younger, and when we call our friends, they don't know how to help us or how to handle it. And we may become, they might say some things that really hurt us, actually, and it might make it worse too. So we want to be careful about who we do talk to, and do our best to find people that can help us, and maybe have done enough of that work on themselves that they can be that strength for us when we need it. So I want to say that. And I want to touch on one of the reasons I also brought this up, and as Brian was sharing, when I was talking about this collective energy. And actually it's interesting because I was having a discussion with myself about what to share, and knowing that some of the people watching this might be in a place where they're emotionally vulnerable, and I don't want to add anything that's bringing any more fear into someone's life. And I have a very profound relationship with the non-physical world, and that's something that is part of why I had my depression, because there was no way for me to talk about that or understand what was going on in my field. And there are many different cultures, around the world that really do believe in spirits. And when they look at things, they're like, this person has a, negative spirit attached to them. I brought up Eckhart Tolle's work. He will never actually use quite, he's like, they're like entities, but he talks about things as thought forms that grow momentum. So I do want to actually talk about this thing too, because when we start to understand ourselves on that energetic field, we can be plugging into consciousness or a thought form or a collective unconsciousness that is not supporting us, or that has a certain type of frequency. And we may not, as Brian brought up, always be aware of our own inner self-talk and how negatively we're talking, but also bringing to awareness to start checking in and see if we're maybe plugged in, to a sort of a sweeping that's going through the collective consciousness. And some of the tools that I also want to share with that I've developed for more of a magical and spiritual realm, around cleansing myself. And some of those basic ones can be literally taking a saltwater bath. I know that people are aware of sage and clearing the space out. They're important. I actually, and actually I want to share this too, because I know there are going to be some people on here, I know for a fact who will be watching this recording, who are actually wanting tools to support other people who are going through this. And it's not necessarily them, and wondering and feeling helpless about how to help the person they care about. The energetic realms, for me, and all I can speak about is my experience, are very real. And I think that we truly underestimate, when I brought up doing the chi work, doing certain types of visualizations for ourselves, there was a point in my life, and I'm just going to give some basic ones. And there are, part of my healing path, I've studied a lot of magical things. And when I started to realize there's so many practices to put up boundaries, these are the things that help me to keep myself not just getting infiltrated right and left from anything that I did not give permission to come into my field. And I can't teach all of them here right now, but some of the basic things could be literally like visualizing a bubble of white light or golden light or whatever color feels right to you in the morning and at night. So you're putting up a shield. Excuse me. And like sometimes just the simple phrasing around that can be like, the shield is attracting wonderful opportunities and lightly repelling what does not serve my highest good. And we can also do that for someone else. So for those of you who are seeing someone who's suffering and you don't know what to do, and maybe they won't even talk to you, you can send them positive energy and visualize. You can feel good feelings in your body and literally just project them and feel them going into their energy field. And maybe you're going to sit there, and part of moving into like working in the energetic realms is that you're going to have to learn, because your mind might tell you you're just making this up. It works. I know my entire life is based on energy healing, and I profoundly understand it and experience it in my reality. Sending energy that little bit of energy could be the energetic support that person needed. And they may never even know that you sent it to them, that you're praying for them. If you believe in angels, for yourself, call it, there are archetypes. If you can think of them as actual angels. If you don't even want to think of them and you want to in that way, and you want to think of it more of like a psychological archetypical thing, people have been praying to these thought forms for thousands of years, calling in an archangel like Archangel Michael to cut your cords. So let me just chat about that as far as protecting our energetic sphere. Having a practice, something that we don't do so much in this culture, is really respect the shift between our waking and our sleeping consciousness. So I found something that's been very powerful for me is having a ritual around when I'm moving from my waking consciousness into my sleeping consciousness. And you can have a notepad, for example, by your bed. Anything that you want to get done that's like a tedium that might cycle in your head, I write it on a piece of paper and I have it there. So my mind knows in the morning when I go back to my waking consciousness, I'm going to deal with that. Great. But my sleep time is for me to rejuvenate and to replenish myself. And I will pull the cords energetically from the day so that I'm not leaking energy, right? This is how I keep my energy container clean so that I don't have the feelings I used to pick up, because I used to cord into everyone and I didn't even know I was doing it. As it's actually a little bit of a pet peeve for me, the discussion around empaths, because sometimes I can find it to be quite disempowering of like, I'm an empath and I feel everything. And yes, I get it, but that's the disempowered aspect of empathy. The empowered aspect is to actually claim dominion over ourselves and get clear on like how you want to feel in your own body first. And then because you're actually so tapped in, you can then become a person that radiates that energy and shares it with others rather than having it move this way of like, I feel everything going on with everyone. You do actually have the capacity. And just like building muscles in a gym, you got to go do the exercises every day. But there are practices that can help you to start to develop where you're not, once you first give yourself permission to stop feeling everyone else's things and know that you're still lovable, even if you're not fixing everyone else's problems. That can be one of the deep unconscious things that like, oh, well, because I'm an empath and I feel everyone, people love me because I take care of them. You're lovable because you're you. You don't need to take care of everyone and fix everyone else's problems. And we can get into that. Those of us who are sensitive that way can get into that because by default, when we don't know we're doing these things to cope, when we feel things going on in other people when we're younger, we don't want to feel them. So we then compensate our behavior so that those people don't feel bad. And we end up living our lives not necessarily centered in ourselves, but always looking outside. This goes back to the danger thing, right? It's a coping mechanism to like, how can I make sure everyone's okay? And that can become very draining. So giving yourself permission right now, again, coming back to just choosing self-love, like that is what's going to heal our own lives and heal collectively humanity, is more and more of us really choosing that and reminding each other and bringing each other back to that space. And knowing that you're loved, even if you're watching this recording and I have never met you, I love you. That's why I'm doing this, like recording, because I care about you and your life. And I want to make sure you have the tools. And I feel so blessed. Everyone who showed up to this call and Brian sharing, we are people that have gone through this and want to share what has worked for us so that you can feel supported. So taking at night, just whatever feels good, you can like scan through your field, and you're probably going to be like, am I just making it up? It doesn't really matter. It's at some point, if you do this practice regularly, you will start to actually see things. Like for me, I used to do a lot of channeling. And when I was growing up, I had tons of acne. And so, of course, as a teenager, I'm like talking to spiritual beings and I'd always be like, how do I heal my acne? And I heard one day, and milk thistle. I had never heard of milk thistle in my entire life. There was no place where I could have found that in my logical mind state. And I went and I looked it up, and it was for detoxing the liver, specifically for skin issues. That was the experience that I was like, oh, wow, I actually am sourcing information from a realm beyond what I logically knew already. As we start to go into practicing these things, you'll start to have experiences that give you faith and start to help you see that you actually are being supported in certain ways. So as you're scanning through your field, you may be telling yourself, maybe I'm totally making it up. It doesn't matter. Let it be real for you and pretend that it's real, and just, I'm clearing my energy field. Okay, well, I'm sensing something here. Great. I'm going to like clear that out. If it's feeling like, is this my energy? Oh no, I had this discussion with so-and-so and I realized she was a little sad. And I'm sort of still picking up that sadness and feeling responsible to help support her. I'm going to give it up to the angels, or I'm going to send it into the light so that she's supported. And clearing your energy field on a regular basis is such a huge support. And I want to just sit here and say, like, these things are real. These practices are part of the practices that have saved me. And that's part of the passion of like putting this together and titling it spiritual, because part of my depression was people not validating my reality as a sensitive person, and having to hide and not talk about these things. And part of my healing is sharing some of these things. And not everyone on here may be that sensitive, but for me, I was that sensitive. I remember, talking to spirit beings as a child and being told, like, who are you talking to? And I remember filtering them out of my reality because I was highly perceptive to subtle realms. I had to shut my energetic system down to not perceive them anymore. And that led to, honestly, me getting a 3-pound tumor in my body because I had just shut my whole system down. And I then had to learn to reopen it up. But part of that was giving myself permission to actually live in reality the way that I sense it, and learning how to clean out my energetic field so I wasn't picking things up, and learning to start seeing what was mine. And I just want to share, if there's anyone on this call that has experiences like that. When I was younger, I could stand on a land that maybe had some pretty traumatic things happen and not really realize it, and feel the pain and be crying for a week and really not know what was going on with me. And because I've been blessed enough to find some teachers and learn ways from indigenous cultures. And I think the call right now to these ways of being is that, the English language doesn't really even have that many words for energy or spirit. It doesn't really have the tools. So many of us are now going back to like other cultures that have preserved this and do interact with the spirit world and with the soul world in a different way. And we have to learn their terms. We don't even really have a word for like chi. In Hindi, it's prana. We say life force, it's 2 words, but in China, there's like 500 different words for different types of chi because they understand these realms so much. So I just wanted to share that there too, because a lot of us who are sensitive don't realize what's going on. And go online. I mean, anyone who is on here, you'll be getting an email from me. You probably have my IG. You're welcome to DM me. I will share resources. But I just wanted to also kind of put that stuff in there. The saltwater bath, the salt is great for pulling stuff out of your system. And when we do these things, we want to do them with intention. Coming back to the power of the mind and the more aware we become, right? There's some things, everything we do in life is a choice. And some of those choices are unconscious choices because we don't know why we're making them yet. And some of them are more conscious, but making the conscious choice to love yourself, making the conscious choice to start noticing when you are, as saying something not so nice to yourself, and giving yourself your power back. If you're saying something when you do notice it that's not nice to yourself, I know it can feel very difficult, but actually all you have to do is just don't think that and think something else. Make the choice to say something nice to yourself. And at first it might be sort of the fake it till you make it, but doing that was a key part for me in my healing, was noticing my thought patterns. I really got this because when I broke my face, I had to go through a legal issue. Unfortunately, they did not take what happened to me seriously, and a 16-year-old kid was killed. I got hit in the face on a double-decker bus, and unfortunately, a few months later, someone died because they did not take what happened to me seriously, and I had to go through a whole legal thing. But at one point, my lawyers actually had to hired someone to come work with me because I have taught myself and programmed myself to twist things into the positive perspective. And the person sat there, and as we spent a whole day looking, because I have chosen for myself to take responsibility and not be the victim. And this is how I got myself into this situation. And because that gives me the power to change it. That is something that has worked for me. And as I was working this is quite a few years ago with that woman, I actually for a moment watched in my own process where my thoughts would come up, and I've become so meticulously good at grabbing them and forming them into a story that works for me so that I feel good in my life. And that took a lot of work. And at first it can seem very hard, but again, it is literally the same as going to the gym and doing push-ups. It's a muscle. You can develop it. And all that it begins with is choosing to love yourself and choosing to say something nicer to yourself. And again, some other things we talked about, choosing to ask for help when you would like help and support, and choosing to maybe go online and do some research about different tools that are out there that could support you. we're really blessed right now that there are a lot of people like starting to feel confident enough to speak up and share their stories, and they want to be of service. So I just wanted to share that. Does anyone else want to kind of share anything else before we wrap this up? Go for it.
First of all, profound, profound gratitude to you, Nada, for hosting and for sharing, right, from your authentic lived experiences, and just super brave and courageous. So thank you. And to Brian too, I know you also spoke earlier, and just again, really humbled by all that you've brought forward, and again, just so grateful that you're still here and with us, and to know you. Yeah, I'm just blown away. I mean, I think, part of, like you're saying, what's so inspiring about this time that we're living through is people like yourselves, right? This willingness to speak authentically and to share openly, and to help to normalize this conversation around mental health and suicidality. Yeah, so let's continue these conversations. Absolutely, as uncomfortable or foreign, or again, fill in the blanks they might be. I know they're incredibly powerful, and just to continue to mitigate and hopefully reduce the stigma around it. I think, similar to what you all have shared too, I've also lost a friend, a childhood friend, who died by suicide, and just so heart aching, right, to think as well that as you said earlier, that may have been his solution. And yeah, just wanting to remind, kind of echoing what you're saying, right, this power of not just mindfulness, right, like this non-judgmental awareness of what we're experiencing, both internally and then as well as we hold space for others. I love what you were talking about, that self-talk too, and just really wanting to continue this practice, right? Of, I love your visual of holding hands or reaching out to other people's hands. It's so lovely. And there is that give and take, right? Because there are moments, on both sides where we accept and where we receive. And it's such a dynamic process, and just thinking a lot about this practice of inner compassion or self-compassion. And I know you're saying this as well, and all that great research around that too. And it's not woo, right? Even just to be able to zoom out and take that step back and think about someone that you really care about in your life, and what would you say to them, and how would you say it, right? Which is based a lot on Kristen Neff's work. So wanting to underscore that practice, which I know for me is a daily practice. It is a moment to moment practice as well, but like you're saying, it's a muscle, and what we practice, we strengthen. And I guess just the last thing, sort of that mindfulness, kindfulness, breathfulness kind of framework, if helpful, is just continuing to hopefully, engage, as you and Brian were talking about, right, in tools and practices that help to regulate our nervous systems. And what's that thing that can calm you down, right? And even such, as simple as extending the exhale, or even just bringing your attention to your breath, I know for me has been tremendously helpful. And I know you mentioned as well some of the practices that you've shared that have been helpful too. And yeah, just reaching out. I mean, I think staying connected. And I guess I'll just offer, because you had mentioned around some of the resources for those that are tapped in. Yeah, mental health first aid, the suicide hotline. There's that 988 number that people can text and can call in most locations. I'm a mental health first aider, so I'll also just share the 800 number for the suicide prevention hotline, which is 800-273-8255. And really just, leaning in, turning towards reaching out to folks that are there to talk through these complex conversations and feelings, and to offer that support, because you and we're not alone. We're all in this together. So thank you. Thank you.
Will you say the texting number again? What is that?
Yeah, it's 988.
Okay, so you just text anything to 988, say I need support. How does that work?
Yeah, so ideally it's available nationwide. So again, similar to 911, it's a helpline that you can call for suicidality, and or as well text. And then or the person dialing will be connected to a trained suicide counselor.
Awesome. Thank you, love.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Want to share anything, Stacy? No pressure if you don't want to, but I also know your wealth of wisdom over there too. So
Oh, thank you, Nada and Elle and Brian, and everyone who's joining us on here was able to view this once this is shared, the recording. But I'm so grateful, Nada, for you having the courage to bring this forward, this conversation, and shine some light on the darkness of it, and also speaking to it's okay to feel uncomfortable. It's okay to feel sad and to not have to hide it, and to use our words and our voice and to not let it live in silence within us, but to let it out and speak to someone, anyone, to ask for help. Yeah, when you dropped on and shared that you were going to be creating this gathering and knowledge of information and education from your own experience, and hearing from Brian and Elle, I'm just so grateful, because I agree, we have to talk about it and get out of the unknown, right? And it's understandable that a lot of us can't grasp it, but the only way for us to get better communication is to talk, and to also find our tools and around energetic beings and empaths, highly sensitive, all of us. I just think that the additional tools you provided, thank you too, because that's really helpful to add protection, and also knowing that we can send that out. So yeah, I'm so grateful to all of you and for this time together. So thank you.
yeah, I am too. Thank you. I love all of you. I'm so grateful, and it really, I want to say, I just, in the last few days, I felt this in myself and in the sphere, this tremendous shift. And I have a hope right now, like, as much as there seems to be some crazy, dismal things going on in the world, um, I, I feel like if there's this concept of a critical mass, right? I really feel that enough of us have done the work and have sort of anchored into the collective field a new possibility. And when we all do get to a certain level of work, it makes it much easier for everyone else that hasn't quite done that, because it's already being anchored in the field, and I feel it anchored in there. And I want to say thank you to each of you who are here live, and to everyone on here watching this. We're doing it. Like, there's a lot of stuff to heal, and we're doing it, and we're not doing it alone. And part of the magic of this next evolution of humanity is learning how to co-create together and be this powerful group of humans that we are, and to love ourselves and enough to be open and vulnerable and share our tools and connect with the people that we're called to connect with, and love each other, and it could sound cheesy, and it's the most powerful thing in the world. It truly, truly is. And I love all of you, and I feel really blessed to be here and be a part of this. So thank you so much for sharing your tools and showing up. And I love you guys. Have a beautiful day or night or wherever you are. So many blessings.